Vladimir Putin has declared war on this country. He is fighting a war against Britain on multiple fronts and playing by a different set of rules, said the Defence Secretary. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, who's the Defence Secretary? Anybody? Anybody at all? Oh, too late. Gavin Williamson. As in, who? He's the chap who replaced Michael Fallon, who had to leave his post due to wandering hands syndrome.
Disgusting.
Yeah, there's a lot of it about. So Gavin Williamson passed his typing and shorthand exam to become a brand new shiny Defence Secretary. Hello, how may I direct your call? And he's accused Russia of trying to damage Britain's interests, amid concerns that relations between us and Russia have hit an all-time low. Oh no, an all-time low. He said we were in a cool war with Moscow. That's that's not cool as in
groovy.
Yeah, not a groovy war. It's just not a cold war. It's a cool war. Not a cool wall. That's a car show. We're in a cool war with Moscow.
Yowza.
He claimed that the Defence Secretary, claimed that UK troops could do more to take on Russian Twitter trolls and dispel their lies as they tried to damage the British economy. UK troops? What's he doing? Somebody stop him. This Defence Secretary, he's the tough guy who said that we should kill any British people that have gone on an action holiday to Syria. He said they should be hunted down and lightly killed. But there's a big difference between shooting some deluded teenager in combat fatigues in the Middle East and declaring war on Russia. Somebody stop him before Vlad hears about it, because otherwise we're in big trouble. So Gavin Williamson, he was promoted to the cabinet just this month, in another trademark wise decision by Theresa May. You might be wondering what his history is and how he comes to be in charge of our defence. Well, he has a working history in the Staffordshire pottery industry. I'm not making that up. He also worked for an architectural design firm. So naturally, he was first choice to be the man to head the military. He told the Daily Mail, Russia are fighting a war against Britain on so many different levels. We're in a cool war, but one where Russia is incredibly active in trying to do damage to Britain's interests. We need to make sure our armed forces have the resources to deal with it. But you don't stop a Twitter that's quite hard. You try it. You don't stop a Twitter troll with a gun, unless you actually go into their bedroom and start spraying the place with bullets. And you don't stop a Twitter troll factory in Russia with soldiers. You stop them by utilising experts who can repudiate their fake news. You use anti-Twitter trolls. Our Defence Secretary said that warfare is changing and Russia would use any means in which to undermine British and Western interests. And can you think of anything that might have weakened this country after an internet campaign by Russia? You'll be able to phone in and ask one of our presenters. He has the answer to everything.
I'm a nutcase.
Theresa May last month accused Moscow of spreading fake news and interfering in European elections. And she warned the Kremlin, we know what you're doing, and you will not succeed. Wrong, Mrs. M. They are succeeding. Exhibit A, Brexit. Exhibit A, the orange nightmare in the White House.
You are going to love President Trump.
It's been claimed that 400 Twitter accounts are linked to a Russian troll factory in St. Petersburg. It used to be that troll factories used to make Christmas toys for children with sticky up hair. Now it's something entirely more insidious and not at all cool. There's a troll factory in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and they tweeted about Brexit into the run-up to last year's referendum. If you've been on the... have you seen the internet? Oh, it is huge. There's all sorts of stuff on there, you wouldn't believe it. And if you have been on the internet and you were on there before Brexit, looking at, innocently looking up Facebook or Twitter, you probably saw some of the work of this Russian troll factory. They may have instilled in your mind some of the opinions that you have on Brexit and Donald Trump. Particularly on the latter, the amount of calls that I get in support of Donald Trump just seems, it's mystifying until you realise that there's a troll factory in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and it's just peppering the internet with this stuff. The revelation of this troll factory fueled concerns that Moscow had intervened in the vote for Brexit and rolled out tweets in an apparently coordinated attempt to sow discord in the UK. And Mrs. M said, "Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope." I'm sorry, that wasn't Mrs. M, that was Mrs. T. And how did that go, by the way?
Fabulous.
Of course, the Defence Secretary isn't suggesting that we go and shoot up Vlad the Insaner's place. He hopefully meant that we should deploy the Army's 77th Brigade, the Twitter warriors, some elements of which focus on social media. That is apparently a thing in the Army, the 77th Brigade. So you distract the enemy by uploading a picture of puppy dogs in baskets, and then you barge in and shoot up the place. The Defence Secretary says we do face a great threat because there are apologists for Russia in this country. And he was not referring to you-know-who.
We've got a few idiots in our party.
He was actually pointing the finger of blame at the Labour Party. Like it's their fault. He said, we've got a Russia that's trying to challenge NATO and Britain and the United States and Eastern Europe, which sounds like everywhere other than Australia. He says you've got Russia that is quite content to cause us both economic and military damage if they can do so, and looking at how they increase their military footprint. These are all the things that Russia are doing, and they're doing it very well. Great success. Many people think that they fashioned Brexit, and how's that going, by the way? Are we more united and better off yet? No. And back to where we started, by the way. Pop quiz, can you remember the name of the Defence Secretary? I just told you.
Negative.
No. He's made a great impact. This is a very keen message just come in. Says, as a Brit living in continental Europe, I feel isolated. Please help me. I need your help. Please stay in the European club. The Italians and the Danish and the French love Grimsby and the Grimsby folk. Love and support from us Brits here in continental Europe. I don't know how to answer that. I really don't. Well, we love you too. A bit. Well, not much. A smidge. A smudge. I'd like to talk about the not the state of the economy in general, but the state of our personal economies. Because I think that Vladimir Putin may have this country under attack, but I think that we personally are under attack. It's just that we don't know it yet. It's almost as though the attack is coming in the form of a favour. And we are lapping it up, mistakenly. So I'll talk about that. Also, Donald Trump seems to have completely lost his mind. As in... yeah, a little bit. So that too, and much else besides. This is a story, and I think that commentators have got this angle wrong. They are concentrating on the wrong thing. It's almost like prestidigitation, where the conjurer waves his hand in your face, and you're paying attention to his hand, but he's picking your pocket meanwhile, unbeknownst to you. At least I think that's what he's doing in your pocket.
Disgusting.
Big banks are ditching 37 cash machines a week in order to boost their profits. And commentators are talking about, the amount of money that it takes to upkeep one of these cash machines. Oh, it is huge. You know, one of those things in the hole in the wall that squirts out the money. The biggest four high street lenders got rid of almost 2,000 ATMs in the year to October. That is the banks. No! Exactly. And if you add this onto a wave of branch closures, because nobody really goes into a bank anymore, I went into a bank just the other day. It was the most annoying experience of my life. You go up to the counter, and I just wanted to pay a cheque. And they said, "Oh, no, we don't do that here, sir." I had a credit card bill. All right, full disclosure, it was my mum. I was with my mum, and she had a credit card bill, and she wanted to pay by cheque. This is a branch of her own bank. And they said, "We don't do that, madam. Not at the counter. Would you like to take a seat?" Because banks look like, well, I was going to say a lounge, but nobody would actually furnish their lounge in that manner. No one would. They look like the departure lounge of a really bad airline. That's where nylon goes to die, in a bank's branch now. And so you get to perch on the edge of this bad sofa and wait. And then you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and then eventually a girl comes around, and when I say girl, I don't mean woman, I mean an actual girl, like she's skipping school. She comes around with an iPad. "Hello, how may I help you? Yeah, I'd like to pay a cheque, please." "Oh, yeah, as though that's the most difficult thing that she's ever heard in her life." Ooh, cheque, yes. Trying to rack my brain. Cheque. Let me look that up. It took about 5 minutes for her to punch all the details in her iPad thing. It used to be you just hand it over the counter and they'd stamp your receipt and give it you back, and you were gone. Now it's like you're being interviewed for a job. What are they doing? Anyway, maybe they're bored because nobody goes in there anymore. And so they amuse themselves by torturing whoever it is that crosses their threshold. Anyway, they're closing branches now in order to help us. Critics said the data shows that banks are abandoning customers in towns and villages, wrecking shopkeepers' livelihoods, and giving vulnerable people or leaving vulnerable people without cash. Holy smoke! That is a pretty long list of what's the word? Not crimes exactly, because that would be going too far. It's of accusations. There you go. You'd almost be inclined to believe they're not very nice people. Bankers. And these figures were produced by Link, which you've probably seen printed on the hole-in-the-wall machines. They oversee Britain's 70,000 free cash machines, which are decreasing in number by the day. And like I said, commentators are saying that this is terrible for people who live in villages. There's probably a couple of villages still left that haven't been spread into each other, into like vast urban sprawls in this country. But that's not why the banks are doing it. They're missing the point entirely. There's a growing backlash over Link, this company that oversees our free cash machines, a plan to cut the fee which banks pay to independent ATM operators to help cover costs. Apparently they cost a lot to run. And we are told that regulators are poised to step in if this plan to close these machines inconveniences people. They're going to protect us as customers. Yeah, sure they will. That sounds likely. Consumer Group Which, finance expert fellow called Gareth, said, significantly reducing this free cash machine network could have a real impact on consumers who might be left struggling to access the cash they need. And so we must see scrutiny from the regulator, struggling to access the cash they need. And you know what the government's position about that is, I expect? I expect it would be, what do you need cash for? Said in a suspicious manner. Cash? What are you going to use that for?
Want to score some pot?
Guilty! See, I think people are missing the point here. I would suspect that banks aren't shutting down cash machines because of the onerous cost of maintaining them. That's peanuts to them. That's the kind of change they'll find in the ashtrays of their cars. I reckon the reason is the same as the contactless payments revolution. This is all part of their little scheme to persuade us to ditch cash and pay for everything on a card. thereby increasing the likelihood that we will not pay off the entire bill at the end of the month. No one does. And so you start racking up the interest on everything you buy. In fact, everything you buy, once you don't pay off your bill at the end of the month, everything you put on your card, you're not buying it anymore. You're renting it off the bank. It's not the thousands that banks lose in maintaining the cash machines they're interested in. It's the billions that they can make if they hook everyone in the land on paying by card. And the fellow who runs Link, a bloke called John, he warned that ATMs, automatic teller machines, that's that right? It's just one of those acronyms that you just throw out, and I haven't really thought about what that means for such a long time. Automatic teller machines, like, you know, the robots in the wall.
Correct.
He says they could all be gone within 10 years, and once they're gone, we ain't got cash no more. Actual real folding money, although those new notes, they don't really fold very well. Have you noticed? I don't really like them, but I'd like more of them. At least if they spend a couple of hours in a tramp's front pocket, at least the the gunk and the ooze will slide right off. You know, it won't be impregnated. So the fellow who runs Link, he warned that ATMs could vanish from the high street within a decade. And like Woolworths and every other shop that used to be on the high street that is now closed and has been replaced by a charity shop or nothing at all, we'll miss them when they're gone. I bet we do. So that's another nail in the coffin for KASH. Take the cash. Who was that? Reckless Eric? Get Reckless Eric on the phone and he'll splain it to us. Let's have a call in... Oh, who's been waiting the longest? Battersea. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello.
Stephanie.
It's about the cheque problem you had with your mother.
Yes.
Yes, well, I'm in my 50s and I don't like cards and stuff. I'm stuck in the older generation mode and I go...
No, wait a minute. 50s is not older generation. You're young and vital, Stephanie.
Kids like the cards. I go to Metro Bank. It takes 1 second to put the cheque over the counter and process it, and you're gone. 1 second. There's no argument. In Metro Bank are fantastic. I go there with the dogs. The dogs get biscuits, they get water, and they get a dog treat.
Oh God! Well, there's an excellent reason not to go. They got dogs in there.
Yeah, don't be nasty. Come on, don't be like that. Come on, we want to love everyone. Come on, don't be like that. Be tolerant.
But dogs aren't people.
Try and be tolerant. Come on.
Tolerant? No. I try not to surround myself with anything that's stupider than I am, or smellier, for that to matter.
Pardon?
I want to be the smelliest and stupidest person wherever I go.
Oh, don't be like that. No, but go to Metro Bank with your mother.
Yeah,
There'll
definitely.
be no problems with
I won't
checks.
be doing that. No.
All right then.
All right. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Another satisfied customer. What's she talking about? What's a Metro Bank when it's at home? I never even heard of it. Anyway, so we walked in, and my mum goes up to the counter. Have I mentioned this? I think I have.
Yes.
And she said, she confidently, because a lifetime of walking into a bank and paying things by cheque, you'd expect them to understand what a blooming cheque is. And so she proceeded to the counter, and there were two people at the counter not doing anything. I thought, oh, great. It's at lunchtime too, no queue. And the reason that they didn't have a queue in there is because they don't actually function as a bank. It's just a waiting room. I couldn't believe it. She said, have I explained this already?
Correct.
They said, oh no, we don't do that here. You'll have to go and take a seat. Take a number. Like you're in the hospital waiting for a blood test. Take a number, sit down and shut up. And then we'll be over in a while. We'll send a child over with an iPad. And they can take 3 hours to punch all your information in, and which should have taken, like that lady said, should have taken as long as it would take for a dog to stiff your bits and have a treat. The two not being connected. Just to be clear. There is a dividing line between this show and Lucy's show. We don't do the same thing at all. It's the biggest crash fade in radio, probably in the history of radio, between Lucy and this show. So anyway, did I tell you the time when I went into a bank with my mum?
Yes.
She wanted some money over the counter. They said, oh, no, we don't. Money? No, we don't do that here. Money? No, this is just a time-wasting facility. Please sit over there and wait for an assistant. Jim says it's a nightmare. iPads everywhere, and you can't even go to the dentist's now without being handed an iPad and being asked to tap in your life story. What? It was a good job I don't go to the dentist then, isn't it? He said, add to that, being a dentist. Can somebody, is anybody a dentist in this audience? Can you call in and tell me at what point in your life you thought it would be a great idea to stare into other people's mouths for the rest of your life? When did you come up with that genius scheme? But it's just medical profession in its entirety. Like, unless you're an anaesthetist, you know, one of them knockout doctors. Unless you're one of those where your customer is unconscious, then maybe that's just me. Hopefully it is just me, and the medical profession hasn't downed tools and walked off the job, realising the ickiness of what it is they do. Anyway, Jim says it's a nightmare. iPads everywhere. You can't go into your dentist now without being handed an iPad and asked to tap in your life first story. Add to that the tsunami of options at the cash point. Would you like a receipt emailed to you, texted to you, sent round to your house on a pigeon? I'd like the pigeon facility, please. I'm seriously considering feeding the birds this winter. Because it just seems like the decent thing to do. But I'm concerned that grey squirrels may nick their whatever it is that they sell in shops, whatever that block of grey stuff with bits in it is. I'm concerned that squirrels may nick it. They've got plenty enough food as it is. There was a story about red squirrels that may be making a comeback in a small, very small, insignificant area of the country because they just planted a tree, or three, and they said that this is going to be, we're drawing a line, you know, one of Mrs. T's lines, beyond which grey squirrels must not come. So that problem is solved. You don't need to worry about that anymore. But anyway, this is not why you called. Is it, Annie?
Oh, about grey squirrels?
Yeah.
Or red squirrels? No, not really.
No, not red squirrels, grey squirrels. Grey squirrels are the enemy of red squirrels, which are nice and small and fluffy, and we like them. They're not furry rats at all, but grey squirrels should be executed without hesitation. I think everybody has agreed on that. As long as I don't say anything controversial, that's fine.
I think they are actually in a lot of places. Certainly just up the road from us they are, because, you know, in the Lake District and South Lakes there's still quite a lot of red squirrels.
Are there?
So there are... Oh, yes, it's full of red squirrels, and they're very tame.
Really?
Yeah, they are.
I thought red squirrels were virtually extinct in this country now.
Not in the Lake District.
Because
no.
some idiot brought grey squirrels in for what reason I can't imagine, and they took over because they're bigger and they're more aggressive and unpleasant. They should get a job in the banking industry.
Yes. No, there are still parts of the country where there are red squirrels, and the Lake District is one bastion of them, and then of course Scotland as well.
Right. Well, maybe they just like the rain.
I think they just like being northern.
Is it raining now? Yes.
No, not raining. No.
Is it snowing? Have you experienced thunder snow yet?
No, well, we live about 500 metres from the sea, so not actually here. But if you go, if you drive 5 or 10 minutes up the road into the hills, then it is full of snow everywhere.
Yeah, I bet.
Everywhere around here is absolutely. But we very rarely get it right here. We had about 10 minutes little flurry today, and that was it. But no, it is everywhere else, because my partner walked up the hill. We've got a hill just opposite the front of our house, and he walked up there yesterday because it was a really nice day, And yeah, the whole of the Lake District is covered in snow. The whole of the Yorkshire Dales,
Well, if you look on look online at the Daily Mail online website, half of the internet has been filled up with readers' pictures of snow outside their front windows. There's thousands of pictures on. If you look up the weather on the Daily Mail, you'll find about 1 million pictures of snow taken by readers and sent in to the Mail.
That makes a change from kittens, then, doesn't it?
Oh, poor little kittens.
Anyway, I rang you up about our wonderful new defence minister.
What's his
Williamson.
face? Mm.
Yeah.
I wasn't making that up, by the way. His experience thus far has been working in the pottery industry and in an architectural practice. As far as I'm aware, that's it.
Well, ideally qualified.
Yes, I know. As soon as I heard that a position was available to be our defence secretary, I thought we must get a man who knows his pots.
Yes, definitely.
Hey, you sent me something, by the way.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was very
That's all
nice.
right. Not to be open till you're...
Oh, too late. Oh, a little bit too late. Never mind.
Oh, you naughty thing.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't help it. And I must say, before I forget, that I really appreciate when people send me cards and stuff. It's just very touching, and quite a few people have done that already. So thank you, and thank you, Annie.
That's all right. Anyway, Gavin Williamson. Yeah, it's this classic distraction thing, isn't it? To worry us all about Russia and
well, I am worried.
Sabotaging. Well, yes, but they're not responsible for sabotaging our economy. Let's face it, the Tories have been doing that for the last 7 years. It's really
well, they've had a head
ridiculous.
start.
Yes, I mean, even the IMF has said about a year or 18 months ago that the government should stop austerity now because it is going to damage the British economy, which it obviously is now because, and Brexit as well. What were the two things? I mean, that's what he doesn't want us to think about, the state of our economy and Brexit, which, is a complete fiasco. I mean, look at what's gone on this week.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I talked about Brexit a lot yesterday. I'll try and I'll try and skirt around it today, but it's virtually impossible because it occupies about 90% of the news that isn't about Donald Trump losing his mind.
Yes.
But it was a little odd of him to. He didn't. I don't think that Gavin Williamson, our defence secretary. I'm going to have to put that in brackets every time I mention his name because people won't have any idea who he is. He's the man who knows everything there is to know about Staffordshire pots
And tarantulas.
and tarantulas.
Yes, he's got one in his office. He used to be the chief whip, didn't he? He's got rather a fearsome reputation.
Well, that's just weird.
Yes, and he's called it after a
Teresa.
after a Roman emperor or warrior or soldier or some military person or something that did something like what was it now? Killed their father and ate their children or something ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, so he's called this tarantula after this Roman person.
Yeah, he probably came up with it after a conversation with Boris Johnson, because it's sort of a reference that Bozo of the FO would throw out in order to shove his private education down our throats.
Yes, and I think also it's supposed to, intimidate the younger Tories,
intimidate the hell out of me.
Whip them into shape.
Someone's got a monster. Presumably, it's on a lead or in a cage or a box or something.
Tank or whatever you have them in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why would you want one of those? I mean, people have an instinctual reaction to spiders and snakes. Even babies don't like them, and a baby that isn't aware that they're poisonous and can bite your face off. But so that just speaks of weirdness to me.
Yeah.
What's he got that for?
Well, he's obviously a bit weird, isn't he? And he's obviously very ambitious.
Now let's not get carried away. We don't know that he is weird. I'm just saying it is. It is weird.
Anybody who wants to be a politician is probably a bit weird.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, why would you want to take that punishment? Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah, and what's this got? He was saying it's something going on about Russia and the Labour Party. What on earth has Russia, the Labour Party got to do with Russia?
I've got no idea.
I mean, Russia's gone from extremes in politics, from communism to now sort of gangster capitalism. It's like capitalism on steroids, the Wild West out there, isn't it? It's nothing to do with I don't know.
Vladimir Putin's going to stand for
anything else.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin's going to stand for office again. He's virtually. He has. Well, I was going to not virtually. You can excise that word from that sentence. He has taken over that country.
Definitely. Didn't he change the law so that he could carry on being in power forever and ever?
He. I know that he switched.
Was that Erdogan? It's one of them's done that.
I know he switched from being premier to prime minister, while he still ran the country as prime minister through his puppet, and then switched back after a brief period away from the top job, back to being the leader again. I sort of reset the time at which he can maintain that position by pretending to step away from that position. It's very, very strange, but I guess, and I thought that Time magazine was going to make him their Person of the Year, but I suppose they went the politically correct way and made women who have been speaking out about sexual harassment their sort of anonymous persons of the year.
Well, a bit better than Vlad the Insaner, really, isn't it? I mean, who else could? I mean, you have Erdogan next, or he's a pretty dreadful character, isn't he?
But it's the person that has made most impact over the course of the year. And,
I see.
So I would have said that would have to go to Vladimir Putin if what our Defence Secretary says is correct, has actually happened, that he is fighting a war against Britain. He's either caused or made a great contribution to us leaving the European Union. And, of course, there's this ongoing investigation into Donald Trump's dealings with the Russians, who, of course, he has absolutely nothing to do with, never met one, and has never even been there.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows how much, might have had to do with the EU referendum. But then we've got plenty of idiots in this country that are doing a good job on that, and one that's on this station 5 days a week, unfortunately.
Idiots?
I'm a nutcase.
How dare you?
So, I mean, even with the Russians, I think we're pretty capable of, shooting ourselves in the foot, weren't we, really?
The UKIP has not, nor will it ever have, or nor does it now have, any idiots in their party.
We've got a few idiots in our party.
Once again, I stand corrected.
I don't think we needed a lot of help with that, did we, really? And we've got the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Telegraph and all the rest of them.
All of those flag wavers, yeah. Okay, well, thanks for setting us straight, Annie. And once again, thank you for the present.
You're welcome.
In tweets or texts or emails, the tarantula is called Cronus from mythology. Cronus. And I bet you want to know what Cronus got up to. Well, Cronus learned from Gaia and Uranus that... and by the way, when did Uranus become Uranus? At what point did people decide not to pronounce it that way anymore? I think it was when... did we send up a rocket to Uranus? And I think newsreaders decided that they wouldn't be able to keep a straight face if they were to deliver a story to us about that. And so they switched it. Because it was always Uranus at school. Anyway, Cronus learned from Gaia and Uranus that he was destined to be overcome by his own sons, just as he had overthrown his father. As a result, although he sired the gods Demeter, Hestia, Hera, Hades and Poseidon by Rhea, he devoured them all as soon as they were born to prevent that prophecy. Wow, this shows an education, ain't it?
No.
That's according to the internet. I don't know, it still sounds pretty weird. Well, not still sounds even weirder to me. A little bit strange. If I was in the office of somebody who had a giant spider called after somebody who ate his sons, I would, without making any sudden moves, smile and back slowly out of his office. But that's just me. Battersea, hello, Francis.
Hello, mate. Talking about foreign animal invaders with the grey squirrel, we got flocks of green parakeets in Battersea Park.
Oh, they are so annoying, those things.
They make a completely different sound to any other bird, so
They're
you
horrible.
know it's them.
I know, horrible sound. And they're very aggressive as well, and they turf out our beautiful songbirds. And
But they don't come to the ground to feed. You can't call them down from the trees. You know, they won't come down to ground. You know, if you throw seed out, they don't come down from the tree. They just stay up there, all aloof.
Little green flashes flying across the sky, squawking their faces off.
They've got very long tails.
Yeah, I hate them. They do. They just make a racket, and we don't want to hear them. We want to hear blackbirds and.
Not anymore. You don't hear that anymore. They all hear that squawk of
exactly. So whose fault is that, and why isn't anybody doing anything about it?
Oh, good question. It's just irresponsible darlings around Battersea. Oh God, Polly's escaped through the window. Whatever are we going to do?
Wow, it's almost like being there, wasn't it? That is the Battersea accent he was doing to a T. Thanks a lot, Francis. Yeah, the foreign invaders. We should be doing something about that. I mean, I know we are with human beings, but animals I'm talking about. Squirrels, grey squirrels, that must go. They're annoying. They climb all over the house. They wake me up every morning by climbing up the front and the side and over the roof, and they're just like free rein all over the place. And they dig up my lawn, and I hate them. Plus, they're not red. The red ones are cute, but the grey ones are just furry rats. Ladybirds. A nice person sent me some excruciating information about ladybirds, and they have apparently become the most successful invasive species ever in this country. They have virtually wiped out our cute little, well, I was going to say cuddly, but you'd squash one to death if you tried to cuddle it. And they'd probably bite you for your troubles. But they, the bigger ones that come in all sorts of multicoloured shades, they've virtually wiped out our own, and they're the ones that group together in your windowsills, and you'll open it come spring, and there'll be a million of them stinking in there. Awful. And parrots as well. Somebody should be doing something about parrots, as in getting rid of them, with great vengeance. Southend, hello, Chris.
Oh, good evening, Nicholas. Hello.
Good.
You caught I've got it. I must admit, I do like a bit of banker bashing myself, actually. I mean, one of the things that really kind of amazes me is the people that can least afford to get into debt are charged the most in interest, and yet the people that can most afford, with richer people that can afford to pay off their debt, get charged the least amount of interest.
Yeah, well, that's the way of the world.
But in some ways, all you're doing is, by giving someone more money and charging them more interest, you're going to get them more into debt and make them more poor.
But you say that as though that is an unfortunate side effect. That's the plan.
Well, that's what's annoying about me. I mean, the thing is, actually, my credit rating is, well, it used to be good, then it went bad, and now it's sort of going back up again, essentially. I mean, what's...
Well, here's the sound that my credit rating makes. Going down permanently, diving.
Well, the thing is, here's what's really puzzling, right? I can get car finance at an interest rate of 5%. My credit rating's gone up, but yet for some reason I can't get. I'm trying to do a balance transfer essentially for a credit card where I'm paying too much in interest, a sort of 0% interest-free one.
Yeah.
So, and yet for some reason I can get car finance, but yet I can't get 0% interest-free credit card.
Right.
And here's the other
well, that's because they see you coming. It's a trap, Chris. You try to bounce the amounts around from one card to the next, because you are probably like me. You've got 86 different credit cards, all of which are virtually maxed out, except for one. And when the time comes when the 0% comes due, you just bounce it from one card onto another, hoping that there is a 0% offer available. And and eventually they see you coming and they think, well, just whip the rug out from underneath you, and we won't give you that 0% anymore on that one available card that's got nothing on it, and then you're screwed.
Oh no! But what's even more interesting is I've got savings. I've got quite a bit of money.
Savings? What are they?
Sorry?
What's savings?
Yeah, I've got savings. Yeah,
savings?
I've got £2,000 of savings. It's something that was left over years ago. And yet, for some reason, like I say, based on that, the fact I've got savings, I've got car finance, they still won't give me an 0% interest credit card. But as you say, it probably is due to the fact, like you say, they can see me coming. That's what it is.
Exactly. That's the scheme. That's why banks give out a credit card for 30% interest-free, exclusive for the period. We've chosen you personally because we like you to give you this offer through the post. All you have to do is to take up this offer, and you can spend as much as you like for 30 months interest-free credit. And then, warning! The interest immediately starts to rack up at 20, 25, 30%, some incredible number.
Yeah, it is. I know. And the worst pit are those Wonga people. But here's the other thing as well that interested me. Robert Peston was on a while ago, and he was on with Ian Dale, and he said that in actual fact, low interest rates are actually causing more of a problem than they're kind of solving, because what he said is that it's not really the poor that benefit from low interest rates, it's actually the rich that benefit from low interest rates, because in a sense their assets are overinflated, in other words property, and money is cheap to borrow. So if anything, low interest rates, this is what people don't realise, low interest rates benefit the rich, they don't benefit the poor, because in a sense, people like me, I even though I have got savings, I'm getting nothing for my money.
Chris, oxygen benefits the rich and not the poor. Name anything that benefits the poor more than it does the rich. No such thing exists. It's about the iniquity inherent in the system. Jeremy Corbyn has given a talk at the UN in Geneva, where everyone is rich. And he described the grotesque levels of inequality and mass tax avoidance as among the most pressing challenges faced by the world. I'll come to that in just a minute, because this bloke here wants to say something controversial, I'm sure. Epsom, hello Martin.
Hi Nick, I'd never dream of saying anything controversial whatsoever.
Good, excellent, thank goodness for that.
Yes, I'd like to argue with you about cash.
Yes.
Because it's rubbish.
Cash?
Yes. I'm a millennial though, so, that might just be my sort of predisposition. Cash is not safe, it can be mugged from you, it's dirty, it's full of germs, it's like smartphones as well are supposed to be very germy and disgusting and stuff.
Yeah.
But also it doesn't accrue interest in a bank account. You can spend it
Wait a minute, back up, reverse just a moment. What bank account gives you interest?
Well, if you want me to advertise, you...
No, I don't. But the accrues, you see, now that word accrues interest does imply that we're talking about a large amount of money. There's no bank account that allows you to accrue interest. They might chuck you 10 pence, please, at the end of a year, for stuffing them with your cash, but other than that, you ain't accruing nothing in any bank account.
My bank offers a 5%.
And I'll finish that for you. It offers 5% on up to £2,000 for a year, something like that, right?
No, you can put in a fair bit. And then there's actually, we all like to slate the Tories, and they are fairly useless. But I don't hate George Osborne as much as everyone else. That puts me in minority, but there we go. He introduced a couple of years ago an ISA for young people like me, under 40. And we can put up to £4,000 a year into a lifetime ISA, which can be cashed out for either pension or buying our first home. And if we put £4,000 in, the government gives us £1,000. So I'm not sure. I think it's a 25%. It's 25%, and then the bank also pays interest on top of that. So There are better
Wait,
things
what?
to do with
My tax money is going to give you £1,000. Well, where's my £1,000?
Well, if I'm sure you're under 40, Nick. I mean, you look
No.
it, so
You got no idea what I look like.
I've seen the picture on the app.
Yeah, that's about 50 years old, that picture. I'm 106.
Congratulations.
I made it.
Yeah, anyone under 40 can get a lifetime ISA, and that's 25% on anything you put in there.
Okay, but that's great. That's part of the currency that we use to go about our daily lives. But to remove cash from society, which I'm absolutely certain is their scheme, their little plan, that
Good.
seems no, it's not good.
Yes,
You
it is.
want a multitude of options, one of which is perhaps a place on a computer screen in the basement of a building that has your money apparently stored safely, although it isn't. I mean, if the facility crashes, then you've lost everything. But if you've got money in your pocket, then that won't crash. You can drop it. You can the bank can go out of business, and it doesn't make any difference. You still got the money.
But it's all sort of like there's a government thing. What is it called when they're government-backed? These lenders and banks and stuff. Mm-hmm. Where your money's.
Completely
insured.
safe. Yeah, mm-hmm.
Nick,
nothing
Nick,
could possibly go wrong.
Nick, if I burn your wallet, all your money in there is gone. If your house catches fire and all your cash is in the mattress, what happens?
I'll be sleeping in the streets like they are in Edinburgh.
Well, there you go. If you got money in the bank, you can get yourself to a travel lodge.
Yeah, but what you're suggesting is that is an either or. I'm saying both.
Right, but I'm just saying it's not a very efficient system. Cash. I mean, checks aren't very efficient either. I mean, they're not the fastest.
I completely disagree. Cash is a very efficient system. If you owe me £5, I'd much rather you give me £5 than say, well, let's go to some intermediary where I can pay them with a credit card and then they can put the money into your account. That's not, and then I'd have to go to a bank machine to get the money out. What's direct about that?
I can just go on my phone, type in your bank details.
Yeah, I still haven't got the money. Yeah, I still haven't got the money.
Yeah, you do in your bank account.
Yeah, but that's
Safe
not.
and sound.
Yeah, but no. Yes, yeah, but I want it in my hand.
Why?
Well, for the specific reason that I've been explaining. Once people put everything on their card, they don't tend to pay the full amount off at the end of the month, because what we do is we live beyond our means. Everybody does. Countries do. Practically every country and every person on earth lives beyond their means, and we're encouraged to do so by the use of credit cards. If we were handing over money as we used to for the things that we want in shops, we would only be allowed, without any available credit, we would only be able to buy things we can actually afford. And wouldn't that make the world a better place? It would make it a much less stressful place. I mean, how many people wake up with the cloud of debt hanging over their heads? I mean, that wouldn't be the case if they hadn't gone out and bought lots of stuff they couldn't afford with money they haven't got with the facility of a credit card. That's the problem.
I agree, but you haven't addressed the debit card concept that does only spend what you have.
Yeah, but people don't use debit cards. They use credit cards specifically because they have the ability to spend more than they've got.
I don't know.
With the idea,
I know a lot of people that use debit cards because they are completely interest-free, and you get these horror stories about credit cards and stuff like that.
Right. Well, unfortunately, Martin, I'm not remotely interested in all the people that you know. I'm telling you the fact, Jack.
That's fair enough.
Right.
And, I'll take your Jack tag and run with it.
And run away with it. Yeah. Thanks a lot,
Thank you
Martin.
very much.
Cheers, mate. 0345 6060 973. Mark says, I have 20 bank accounts, as each one does different things. I think we've got a drug dealer here.
Want to score some pot?
He says, I have a large choice of branches to go to because of it. I also have a Euros account in the Republic of Ireland, as it's nice to save money in another currency while the pound falls in value due to Brexit. Definite drug dealer. Simon says, I've said it before, this cashless society is not there to help us, but to make you spend more money. Did I just say that?
Yes.
It says if you have cash in your wallet, you can't spend more than you've got. Debit cards plus drink is a dangerous combination. Well, credit cards is worse. That's probably what you meant to put. And this is the plan. This is why I believe they're getting rid of the cash machines. They're softening us up, and the cards that go boop. Everybody enjoys that. Admit it. You do enjoy going into a shop and not having to insert your card up a machine and then press your super secret PIN. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gave it away. You know, your super secret PIN. You don't have to do that anymore. You just take your card and you go boop, and it's yours. I should have explained that to the bloke previously. Even if it's all on cards, it's somebody can take your card and spend up to 25, £30 on anything that takes their fancy until they're prevented from doing so. Which is some way down the line when you figure out that you haven't got your card anymore. And of course you don't immediately tell your bank because you think, oh, I'll put it in my other jacket or my other trousers, or you dropped it in the car, or it's at home, or it's probably on my desk. It's in the pot by the door where I keep all my stuff. And you look and you look and you look, and meanwhile somebody's out there enjoying themselves with your money. Cash machines are going to vanish from the high street within a decade, the head of the Free ATM network said. Instead, he said customers will be forced to withdraw money from tills in shops. No, they won't. Shops won't have tills stuffed with cash. They're not going to be using cash anymore. You don't have a till stuffed with cash if people don't come in and use cash anymore. If everybody's using the machine that goes boop, cash is not going to be kept in tills. Shops aren't cash machines. They don't want to queue of people at the door who just want to get money out of you. So that won't happen. When the cash machines go, there won't be any cash anymore. That's what they're working towards. This, like I said before, is following on an unprecedented wave of branch closures as banks abandon towns and villages where they can't make a big enough profit. It's all about the money, honey, because apparently having a vast amount is not enough. 60,000 small businesses across the country do not accept credit cards, apparently. And they are going to be put out of business if people don't have access to cash money anymore. The chief executive of the Association of Convenience Stores said we would be very concerned if retailers were required to keep large amounts of cash in their tills. Well, you can require it all you like. They won't. It's a security risk for a start. He believes that cash transactions are going to fall dramatically in the coming years as cards are accepted more widely, contactless spending becomes the norm, and internet shopping continues to rise. Exactly. This is what we're heading for. We're at the crossover period at the moment, at the cusp, as Donald Trump would slur. And the problem is that, as I said before, people don't, despite what the caller said just moments ago, people don't pay their cards off at the end of the month. And I know this because I am in possession of facts provided by experts. So nobody is remotely interested in what they say.
Affirmative.
But I'll tell it to you anyway. And also, like I said, Jeremy Corbyn has been addressing this issue at the UN. I'll talk about that as well. Elle says, I had 2 wisdom teeth out on Tuesday, and my dentist had an iPad. He said, what's your name and address? Well, not only have I known this man for 35 years, he used to be my brother-in-law, and he lives next door. iPads make people nuts, says Elle. I believe that's their tagline on their Christmas advertising. So here's the bad news about money. 5 million people are drowning in credit card debt that costs up to £3.50 for every pound they borrow. What? £3.50 for every pound you borrow. So whatever you're spending on your credit card, for 5 million people, it costs 3.5 times whatever the cost is at the till. But you don't notice that because it doesn't happen immediately. And that is the insidiousness of the credit card. And this is the boss of the city watchdog. He said that debtors will find it almost impossible to repay the money, which is exactly what they want. Andrew Bailey launched a scathing attack on credit card companies for failing to help their most pressed customers. Why would they want to do that? They make a ton of money out of keeping their customers in debt. It's their business model. Why would they change that unless they were forced to? And does it seem like the present regime would force them to change their business model? Think about it. The boss of the city watchdog said that high fees and charges meant that for every £100 borrowed, some families are repaying a total of £350. Not even the mafia would have the nerve to charge you that much.
Absolutely.
Mr. Bailey said that he was concerned about firms tempting high-risk customers with introductory offers that lead them into financial trouble. It's like I was talking about that before. Great interest-free opening offer. Financial trouble. It makes it sound like something that the companies involved would want to avoid. But as financial trouble means a lifetime of paying interest, and that means more profits, and that means more bonuses, then the banks are vanishingly unlikely to change their ways. You know, because it's what Jesus would have wanted. Competition in the card market is fierce because lenders view it as a reliable source of profits in a world of record low interest rates. They're making a little bit less than they used to, or they'd like to, and so they're tempting you with plastic treats. And there it is. The banks want to get us off cash so that what we spend doesn't seem like real money. And it doesn't, does it? It's like shopping online. It doesn't seem like real money. It seems like you just get presents all the time. It's that stimulus and reward cycle. And when you will be able to buy something online and have it delivered within the hour by a robot from space, who'll squirt it up your garden, then the stimulus and reward will go into overdrive. It'll be like Pavlov's dogs, just pressing that button over and over and over again. Because it's exciting, and it doesn't seem like you're actually spending money. And that's the plan, I think. This has not actually been written down. I'm not, I don't have inside information as to the bank's schemes. But this seems to make sense to me. That's their plan. Get us all hooked on debt, on credit cards. And you remove cash, and there is an impediment to that scheme coming to fruition. Gone. So it's all hidden, and it just builds up, and it builds up, and it builds up because you don't realise what you're spending anymore. If you're handing over money at the till, then you would realise, particularly when you ran out of money. That would be a sign. But there is no such sign with a credit card. You just keep bashing it, and bashing it, and bashing it. Particularly at this time of year. And ho, 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 the banks are saying. And we let it slide, and we don't pay it off in full, and suddenly everything that we buy, we're actually renting from the bank. And it costs it puts you in twice as bad a position as the actual price of the thing that you're buying. If you are in debt, everything you buy puts you in twice as bad a position as the value of the thing that you're buying. Say you owe £10 and you wanted to buy something for £1. If you put it on credit, then you would owe £11. But if you use that pound to pay off your debt, then you'd only owe £8. The difference being 2 or twice the amount of the thing that you just bought. I believe that's maths. It is educational, this show, ain't it?
No.
So it just racks up, and everything that we buy we're renting from the bank. You've got an entire planet of slaves working for the man. The bank man.
No!
Yes, that's him. And they offer deals which seem great. 32 months of interest-free spending before the rates shoot up to 20, 25, 30%, and then you're trapped. Like a spider in a cage. And the boss of the city watchdog, who's tipped as a future governor of the Bank of England, said firms can lack incentives to tackle this as these customers are profitable. Do you think? Lack incentive? Now, Labour's put forward a plan, and their plan is to stop anyone having to pay back more than double what they borrowed. It still seems like a lot, but it's a lot more reasonable than it is now. But that plan has been poo-pooed by the financial establishment, who had a small accident when they heard about it. And they said it would be too difficult to work out, and they couldn't possibly figure that out with the biggest calculator in the world, but they seem to have no problem working out how much you owe and writing down the terms and conditions of your agreement with them in detail that you'd need a legal degree and a microscope to figure out. They've got no problem in that regard, but they're singularly unable to help you in any other. And as I said, Jeremy Corbyn addressed the UN about this issue, and I'll come to that in just a minute. But first, here's a call in poshest Hampstead. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, Chris. I think...
Chris? Who's Chris?
Oh, Nick. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. But anyway, I'm sorry about that. I think it's very sinister in another way. It will be the end of privacy. Where you buy your petrol, where you go on holiday, everything will be known. And once we're without our own cash to do with as we please, we'll be completely trapped.
Yes, well, people will say, well, why would you want privacy? But you don't miss privacy until it's gone. And the thing about credit card companies knowing absolutely everything about you is that they know things about you that they have more detailed information about you than you think you have yourself. They know everything about you. You go to the supermarket and you put I don't know, hemorrhoid cream in your basket. That is on your permanent record, Caroline.
Oh dear. But the other thing is, if a government froze all the credit cards, we'd be completely helpless. We wouldn't be able to get our own money.
It does seem as though it's that we're being set up for a giant fall, because we are with credit cards and a cashless society, we are totally reliant on technology. And I think there is at least one incident when technology has been known to fail.
Affirmative.
I think that every now and again technology does have a failure.
Correct.
Yeah, I think I'm right about that. Whereas cash doesn't crash.
Absolutely.
Unlike if you drop an iPad and all of your information is wiped on it, if you drop a paper diary, you just pick it up, and everything is still written in and is completely legible.
I really feel we've got to fight this and save cash. I think it's going to become really, really dangerous.
I completely agree with you, but apparently it's just you and me, Caroline. Nobody else seems remotely interested in this. And it's like the shops in the high street. People aren't really bothered about, the chemist is gone and the newsagent is gone and Woolworths is no more. And but nobody really minds. They don't care until they need them.
Gone.
Yeah, until it's
liberty,
gone.
Until freedom have gone, and then you won't be able to re-establish it. Once the cash is gone, we'll never be able to put it back again.
That's right.
I think it's terrifying.
I think it's insidious. It is. I think it's part of a scheme to utterly enslave the human race in debt.
Yes. And control is coming in everywhere. And one of the methods is closing down these cash machines, because then you won't be able to get at the cash machines, and they're cutting it off in that way.
But that's right. They're just squeezing it out of us slowly, tempting us with a card that goes boop, and everybody likes that, and you like being able to pay for stuff and walking out with it straight away, as though you haven't actually paid for it at all, as though everything's free. That's the idea, to make everything seem free so that you buy a lot of it.
So everyone, go out tomorrow, withdraw £100, and I'm not quite sure what you should do with it. What did you say about hemorrhoid cream?
It's great for the bags under your eyes. So I read once.
Or go and buy a bunch of mistletoe, but be very careful who you kiss, otherwise you might be arrested.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, always ask permission before advancing with your lips. Yeah. All right, thanks a lot, Caroline. So that's an alarming statistic, ain't it? 5 million people drowning in credit card debt, up to their eyeballs, and the rest of us are dabbling in the shallows, up to our nethers. So 5 million, I mean, how many actual real-life grown-ups have we got in this country? Above 24 and below 60, because below 24 you probably haven't racked up very much debt. I mean, how much debt can you rack up on vodka and Red Bull? And above 60 you probably are allergic to credit cards, so you still pay with actual real life money, or you pay all of your credit card bills off at the end of the month, like a proper person would. So between that there's about 30 million adults in this country, and so 5, that's 1 in 6. Well, I better got that right without the benefit of a calculator. Every now and again I almost by accident get one correct. 1 in 6 of us are paying £3.50 for every pound that we put on credit cards. Here is Forest Gate. Hello, Joe.
Nick, I have a credit card for the last 3 to 4 years. I've always paid it before the end of the month, and yesterday I received a letter from the Building Society that said that they're withdrawing my card in February, that they're changing their policies.
What? They've taken your card off you?
They will in February, they said.
Why?
Well, the reason they give is they're changing their policy.
Yeah, but what does that mean? What are they changing their policy to?
Well, it's something to do with the insurance company that covers you if anything goes wrong, that they won't cover me. So they've decided to withdraw the credit card. But I think what it is they're making no money out of me. I've always paid it off before the end of the month.
Well, they're making enough money out of me for both of us, Joe. I'll nominate you as my special friend.
I happen to be in bed, Nick, but if I had the letters downstairs, I would have read it out to you.
Well, don't get up. Don't get up. Not on my account.
Okay.
All right. Hey, is it raining there? Is it snowing there yet? Have we got thunder snow outside yet?
Not at the moment, but it's very white, the sky.
Right. Well, that's very dangerous. Stay in bed. It's safer there.
I'm going to stay in bed. It's safer. Yeah, I'd rather listen to you. You're fantastic.
Well, thanks a lot, Joe. Cheers, mate. This situation has been going on for ages. This is back in September. The Guardian said that credit card lenders appear to be targeting people struggling with unaffordable levels of debt. So it's not they're skirting round them. It's like that last bloke. He's not struggling with unaffordable levels of debt, so they aren't remotely interested in his business anymore. They're only interested in you if you can't afford to pay off the full amount. So, right at the beginning of the show, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said about the poor. Essentially, the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer. Well, here it is in black and white. This is. It's not by coincidence. It's not an accident. It's the plan. Credit card lenders appear to be targeting people struggling with unaffordable levels of debt. This is according to research from the charity Citizens Advice. Almost 1 in 5 people struggling with debts have had their credit card limit raised without them requesting it. as though they're giving them a gift. The gift of more debt. The charity has demanded that the Financial Conduct Authority ban the practice of credit card companies raising your limits without asking you. That's what the Citizens Advice have done. They've demanded it of the Financial Conduct Authority. Yeah, that's right. Stand back, we're going to be saved by the Financial Conduct Authority. It says there are growing concerns over the boom in consumer debt in the UK. More than £67.7 billion are owed on credit cards. That was in July. The most on record, as in ever. And that's according to the Bank of England, who you would assume know a thing or two. So that was in September, and has the government leapt into action to correct this wrong? No. See, it's not just the country as a whole that is up to its eyeballs in debt. It's us as individuals. This was also in September in The Guardian. The chairs of two powerful parliamentary committees have urged the government to set up an independent public inquiry into the £200 billion of debt amassed by households. 200 billion. The call by Rachel Reeves, the Labour chair of the Business Select Committee, and Frank Field, the Labour head of the Work and Pensions Select Committee, comes as the Conservative-led Treasury Select Committee plans to hold meetings around the country to examine the impact on debt of on individuals and households. Have they discussed that with you? I'll just assume that the answer is
negative.
£200 billion of debt amassed on credit cards and personal loans, and, the biggie, car deals. For a long time I was wondering, I've mentioned this on the air several times, I was wondering who the hell are all these people with these brand new cars? I'm driving around with a car that is held together by bird poop. 20 years old it is, and everybody on the road has got a new car. Often white, usually Mercedes. And I'm thinking, who are these people and what do they do for a living? Turns out they can't afford the cars any more than I can. It's just they're all on tick. And that, say experts, is going to be the next credit boom and bust. That's going to be the thing that does for us the next time, just like the property boom, unsecured mortgages did for us the last time. It's just that with property, it's unlikely, particularly in this country, to go down very much, whereas a car loses a third of its value as soon as you turn the key in the ignition. £200 billion of debt amassed on credit cards and personal loans and car deals. And Frank Field said that people in his Birkenhead constituency on the Wirral were being pushed into destitution by the actions of loan sharks and finance companies that heaped extra pain on low-income households with sky-high interest charges. There's 8.3 million people in the UK with problem debts. So it's a good job there's nothing coming up that is going to encourage people to spend a lot of money.
Oh, no!
Nothing on the horizon that is going to cost anybody any more money than usual. I've just checked the diary. I can't see anything. Things are looking very Christmassy out there, by the way. I should mention that a lot of people have gone to a lot of effort to titivate the outside of their houses, and I passed quite a few sites for the eyeballs. It looks great. And speaking on behalf of the people that pass by, we appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
So anyway, back to this. A Treasury spokesman said the government was focused on supporting the growth of secure and better paid jobs as the route out of debt. Really? The increase in full-time jobs in the past 2 years and a higher minimum wage meant that fewer people were coping with low and erratic wages, says the government. Tighter rules on the financial services industry provided consumers with greater protection than before the 2008 crash. Really? That's what a Treasury spokesman said, that the government was focused on supporting the growth of secure and better paid jobs. Well, first of all, they're not. The government is not focused on that. They're focused on Brexit and little else. The government's had to take on thousands of extra people to tackle Brexit. So let's assume that there's no slack left. Second, getting a job that isn't a job isn't really going to help you out of debt. A lot of the jobs that have been created lately are self-employed positions delivering other people's dinner, for instance. That's not going to stop you from having to pile things on the plastic. And third, those jobs aren't secure, and they pile up the insecurity by not giving workers the same rights that used to come with proper jobs, like sick leave and minimum wages and all that sort of thing. And rather than provide consumers with greater protection from the finance companies, as the Treasury spokesperson suggested, the government policy seems to be rowing in the opposite direction. I mean, we've heard Mrs M talk about turning this country into a low-regulation, low-tax economy post-Brexit. That doesn't sound like protection for the consumer. I mean, it seems unlikely, rather, that any of the regulations that the government jettisons will be against the wishes of the banks and in favour of protecting the public, because £1 million speaks louder than 1 million people, which is why lobbying firms get to form an orderly queue outside of number 10 to go in one by one, and we get repelled at the gates. I mean, the Americans are already far down the road to loosening the ties on the financial industry, and so our financial industry is going to want to keep up with them. If Donald Trump loosens the rules and regulations governing how banks and the financial industry conducts itself, then ours, with the power that they have over over this or any other government, with the amount of money that they bring in for our economy, then they are going to be able to get whatever Donald Trump gives the American finance racket. None of which is going to help us personally. Bank chiefs say that economic growth will follow if they are relieved of the rules restricting their behaviour. That's what they promised. And I'm sure that wealth will be shared fairly. But then I also believe that winged chariots pull the moon across the sky. You can't prove otherwise. I mean, the reins were tightened a bit after the crash, but that caused the banks to miss out on some pennies that they couldn't reach. So they are loosening those reins now so that the industry can go at it like they did before the recession. What could possibly go wrong?
Let's get back to it.
And it, in this case, is a person in Chesham called Tony. Tony.
Hello.
Tony with an I, not Tony with a Y, because Tony with an I goes, not
I know. Nobody knows me as Tony, but that's my official name. But if I sign as Tony, they think I'm a man.
That's your official name? Right, well, let's keep it official.
Well, that's the one which is on the passport. Never mind. I lost my credit card bill. I always pay when it's due. So I phoned the firm. So he gave me a number and he said, if you go to the bank and use that number, you can pay it in without having the bill. So he looked through and he said, you are a good customer, aren't you? You always pay on time. I said, yeah, because you're so good. He said, I'll give you £15 credit.
What?
Yeah.
But that's the opposite of being a good customer, paying on time. They don't want you to pay on time. You're a bad customer.
He gave me £15 credit.
I can't believe it.
Because I always pay. And not just that, I save air miles with that firm, and I had about, over the years now, 10 free flights flying to Europe. So you can use the credit card to your benefit if you're wise enough.
I took out a credit card for that particular reason, for getting air miles. But I worked out that I would, to get to Paris and back, I would need to spend something like £60,000 on this credit card just to get a blooming free flight. And then I'd have to pay the tax on top, which is most of the cost of the flight.
I know the tax is horrendous, but I pay. No, it's about £30. But if I fly with air miles, that's all I pay. Where normally I can pay up to £250, depending what time of the year you fly. Honestly.
Well, maybe I'm doing it wrong, Tony.
I think you're doing it wrong.
Right. Well, thanks for setting me straight. Now I'm really depressed.
So you can use it. Yeah, I got £15 credit.
Right. Well, I'm stunned. Maybe they were drunk at the time when you were speaking to them on the phone.
We sounded sober.
Right. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks for the bad news. Cheers, my dear. Jeremy Corbyn was talking to the UN, and he was very cross. He described grotesque levels of inequality and mass tax avoidance as among the most pressing challenges faced by the world at a speech to the UN in Geneva, and he's completely correct in every respect. The Labour leader highlighted 4 main threats faced by humanity: the concentration of wealth and power in a small group of people, exacerbated by tax avoidance, climate change, the refugee crisis, and what he will call a bomb-first, think-later approach to conflict resolution. Is he thinking about anybody in particular when he says that?
I'll bring us into war.
Anybody in particular?
Like to punch him in the face.
He's talking about you, Donny. Bomb first, think later. Corbyn highlighted the recent Paradise Papers revelations as evidence of the scale of tax avoidance. And you know what? They just came and went, and nothing appears to have been done about it. Curious. As the Paradise and Panama Papers have shown, he said, the super rich and powerful can't be trusted to regulate themselves. Of course not. He said multinational companies must be required to undertake country-by-country reporting, while countries in the global south need support now to keep hold of the billions that are being stolen from their people. He says corruption in poorer nations is a global issue that requires a global response. He is right. I mean, just look at our own Commonwealth countries. Cesspits of corruption. And that's not me saying that. That's the chair in office of the Commonwealth, Prime Minister of Malta, the Honourable Joseph Muscat, who was the chair in office of the Commonwealth. He said that in 2015. I don't think he used the word cesspit, but he did say that the Commonwealth was essentially completely corrupt from top to bottom. That's our lot, that is. And you add that to 6 or 7 out of 10 of the top highly secret offshore banking regimes, which are also British protectorates. We're guilty party number one. Jezza said, when people are kept in poverty while politicians funnel public funds into tax havens, that is corruption. He said a Labour government will act decisively on tax havens, introducing strict standards of transparency for Crown dependencies in overseas territories, including a public register of owners, directors, major shareholders and beneficial owners for all companies and trusts. See, this is why I suspect that newspaper proprietors and the people who run big business are so concerned about Jeremy Corbyn coming into power, because he's going to upset the apple cart. Corbyn condemned a system where a wealthy few control 90% of global resources, of growing insecurity and grotesque levels of inequality within and between nations. Well, he's not wrong about any of this, is he? He said this is a global scandal. The most powerful international corporations must not be allowed to continue to dictate how and for who our world is run. He says this moment, a crisis of confidence in a bankrupt economic system and social order presents us with a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build a new economic and social consensus which puts the majority in the driving seat. Pick a hole in any of that. I double dare you. That's what Jeremy Corbyn thinks. The government, on the other hand, is not singing from the same hymn sheet. You know, The Guardian released the Panama Papers a little while ago, along with some other right-thinking publications around the world. And they came back and examined what the government's response was, what the response for the government and from Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Expecting well, I don't know whether they were expecting it or not, but the implication is that they were disappointed. They weren't angry, they were just disappointed with the response of Her Majesty's government to all of this brand new information that has been presented to them. Perhaps they expected them to, do something about it, investigate it fully, and you might expect that the government would ignore it and hope that it just goes away, and that appears on the surface to be exactly what's happened. So I'll get into that in a minute as well. I do want to talk about Donald Trump, because there's another person who has accused him of sexual impropriety, of being a sexual aggressor. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Yeah. And also, he appears to have lost his mind. And the number of people who are suggesting that is the case is growing exponentially by the day. And most often it's people from within his own orbit, people from within his political party. If indeed he is still a Republican, he hasn't changed his mind as he has done previously. So I'll talk about that as well. And whatever else is on your mind, we can go here, there, and everywhere, baby. Jill says, what your previous caller, this was probably some while ago, what a previous caller fails to realise, in a cashless society, what happens when the systems fail, as they often do, and you can't use your debit or credit card. That's right, technology is faulty.
Affirmative.
And every now and again it falls flat on its face.
Correct.
It's not completely reliable. And what would happen in that circumstance if cash was not available to us anymore, as it probably won't be in about 10 years' time? They're getting rid of cash. And your card didn't boop at the shop anymore. I would set your watch. In about 10 minutes flat, there'd be riots in the street. And the Mayor of London would have to get out Boris Johnson's Waffen-Squirter 9000. Hose the rioters from the streets. Cash don't crash. Computers often do. Here's a message from a fella called Alan. He says, I'm a student and I do have a credit card with an APR of 34.5%. 34.5%. And the next bit is in capital letters, like he's shouting at me. However, I only do my food shopping on it and it is repaid in full at the end of the month by a direct debit. This is so I can build up my credit score for a mortgage in the future. Yeah, good luck with that. You said credit cards are not all bad, you know. It just requires self-discipline and some common sense. Correct. And that is two things that nobody has anymore. Self-discipline or common sense. Nobody's got self-discipline, and common sense is not common. It is uncommon. Plus, how smug are you, mate? You're only just starting out in life, and all you're spending money on is condoms, Rizzlers, and cider. Call me back when you bought a house and you've maxed yourself out. Because when you found out how much the bank would give you as a mortgage, you found that the house that you had, or flat, most likely, that you had your eye on, you can't afford anymore. And the glorious lifestyle that you imagined yourself living is not available to you anymore. And so you go down the ladder and down the ladder, and you start looking at places that you don't really want to live in anymore. And then you finally pick one, and it's in a right state. And you want to beat the stink out of it. And then you start spending money on a new bathroom and a new kitchen and new carpets. You want to paint the walls and fix the windows, and you want a new boiler because you quite like to be warm in the winter. But you haven't got the money to do that because you've spent all of the money on buying the least worst home that you could afford. And so it's all gone on credit cards, and you're up to your eyeballs in it. Call me back then, you're so smug. Phil says, I use a credit card, I have no direct debits, and I pay some things by cheque. Banks make very little out of me. Credit cards are for half-wits and rich people. There's a lot of smug people contacting me, and you'll learn. Am I using the right mouse here? Oh, yeah, there it is. What else have we got? Jackie says, my husband was recently in China, and they are well on the way to a cashless society. It scares me that they can monitor everything you do once you use card payments. That's correct. Everything you've ever bought by credit card is on your permanent record. And they will sell that information because at some point you've signed something or said that you've read the terms and conditions. Has anybody ever read the terms and conditions?
No.
No. You could have signed away your arms, for instance, and you would have absolutely no idea, and the bank might not need your arms for the moment, but in the future they would point to the small print and say, well, I'm sorry, but you agreed. There will be at some point that they will sell this information to, I don't know, whoever it might be, Facebook or Google or something like that, and they'll mine the data in an instant and add it to the information about where it is that you go during the day, which they know because your phone is being constantly tracked, and and a few gigantic corporations who don't pay tax will have more information on you than you know about yourself. It is alarming. Abbey Wood, hello, Tony.
Yeah, hello, Nick. This is Tony with a Y.
Yes, Tony.
Yeah, pleasure to speak to you. I love your show. You infuriate me sometimes, but yeah, love the show. Listen, the terrific thing you're talking about tonight with the credit cards. I read recently that George Osborne was trying to have, he wanted in the last manifesto when he was still in the government, to have a cashless society by 2020. Now, what would you do with your children? Do you give them a credit card?
Well, people give them smartphones and iPads now, so it's not such a step, is it?
Can they set up to pay stuff with that? I don't know, but you know, what is the answer to that? What do you do with your kids? Do you give them so you're now ingraining them, you're getting it into their brain that it's okay to be in debt, and it's just all out there, the money, isn't it? No, they have no grasp of. That's how insidious these corporations are.
I think they want to normalise not paying your debts, just racking it up and paying interest on it.
Yeah, totally agree. And Jeremy Corbyn, he has hit it right on the head. When Philip Hammond in the last budget, I think the previous one, wanted to put the tax up and national insurance on the self-employed, and he won't look at these corporations. You know, and someone like me, that I'm white, middle-aged, homeowner, self-employed, I've had my own business before employment, I should be voting Tory. And Jeremy Corbyn is going to absolutely walk the next election. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because after Tony Blair's lot, I said I'd never vote Labour again, not in a million years. But these corporations are more powerful than any government. And this lobbying, I mean, it is unbelievable. What is this lobbying? I don't understand.
Well,
what is it?
David Cameron said
the next big scandal.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah.
He said that years ago, and it was almost as though he said it by accident, because absolutely nothing has happened since.
Yeah.
Which is why I keep saying £1 million talks louder than 1 million people, because we do not have direct access to our elected representatives, not like lobbyists do. People who used to be a part of the government leave the government, they go into a lobbying firm, will earn more doing precious little, having lunch and schmoozing with their friends, essentially, that they've just left in the Palace of Westminster, and putting the case for the organisations that they work for, whoever it might be, the oil companies or the banks or the plastics industry or the chemical industry or the medical firms and so on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, David Cameron and George Osborne, they're probably at the top of the list to be looked into. But you know, you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Well, leave it with me, Tony. I'll investigate them with both hands. All right, thanks a lot, mate. Cheers. So, like I was just saying, the Guardian was one of the newspapers that broke the Paradise Papers, after which nothing happened. And this is Nick Hopkins, who's the Guardian's head of investigations. This is a couple of weeks old now. He said, the initial reaction to the Paradise Papers has mirrored the early arguments around the Edward Snowden intelligence surveillance leaks. You remember when Edward Snowden told us that we were being surveilled at all times? We were being peered at against the law, outside and against the law. And the initial reaction was, well, they're not doing anything wrong. Nothing to see here, please move along. And that's pretty much the same reaction from the authorities to the Paradise Papers. Wealthy people who use offshore arrangements and the industries that support them have defended the status quo and pushed back against reforms that would allow everyone else to see what's really going on in British tax havens. Where is the illegality, they say? We've heard that over and over again. No one's doing anything wrong. Companies say this themselves, as though they've all got the same lawyer. They say that we pay the full amount of tax that is legally due in all of the areas in which we operate. Virtually the same sentence comes from all of them. I think Bongo out of U2 said the same blooming thing, didn't he? The Guardian says that if there's one big lesson from the Paradise Papers, is that currently legal tax avoidance by certain companies and individuals has been shown to be as antisocial, immoral and unfair as many of the arrangements that are banned. Exactly. That's the whole point. Governments and the corporations will say that they're not doing anything wrong, that they're not breaking the law, so that's all right then. Well, no, it is not. They're not breaking the law because they employ hundreds of people in shiny buildings to pore through the law to find a way around it without actually breaking it. But just because it's not illegal doesn't mean to say it's right, of course. But that seems to be the argument of governments and the corporations, and that's the final word on the matter. Oh well, it's not technically illegal, therefore nothing to see here. The Guardian says the laws that allow it have been shown to be open to exploitation, out of date, and in thorough need of urgent review, especially when set against the backdrop of 21st century austerity. You know, I liken it to a bath. The economy of not just this country but the whole of the world is like a bath of water, the water being the money part, and corporations will come along, they just pull the plug out, and all of the money is being drained out of society and is being spirited away down the drain, or in this case to antiseptic buildings in often British tax havens in the middle of blooming nowhere, where it does nobody any good, including nobody in the actual tax haven itself. Those people aren't rich. In Panama, the Isle of Man's, this is another one, the Isle of Man tax haven. The Isle of Man's Chief Constable Gary Roberts in May described financial crime as a genuinely strategic threat. He said that the nature and scale of the investigations engaging a small force were without precedent. In other words, it's getting worse. And he said, if you're going to play in the big world of offshore finance, you've got to have the infrastructure to support it. In other words, you have to have the bodies on the ground, the police, or the financial police, to oversee it. If you don't, then you are going to be taken advantage of. And we have so little infrastructure compared with the might of the people that are draining the cash out of society, that it's almost as though that's part of the plan. It's not against the wishes of successive governments, that it's with the acquiescence of them. From the Paradise Paper documents, says The Guardian, it's clear that the police and the regulators don't have the infrastructure to support regulating the offshore finance industry. The people that do are the accountants, the lawyers, and the tax advisors who run legal rings around investigators and conjure arrangements and schemes that allow their already wealthy clients to shelter more of their cash. And remember, it comes from us. There is a finite amount of wealth in the world, and if it gets spread around evenly, then everybody is not happy, but happier. But it's not even remotely spread around evenly, and it's getting worse by the minute. It says the government's reaction to this, the Paradise Paper documents, is telling. Did ministers express fury at the idea that money that it desperately needs to pay for services, public services, is being spirited offshore? No. The Prime Minister was defensive, merely saying that work is already being done without further explanation. Then came the claim that Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs couldn't check for wrongdoing unless the Guardian and its partners handed over the leaked documents. Now, the Guardian published more than 50 stories from the Paradise Papers. Within them are clues enough, you might have thought, for HMRC to start making its own inquiries, or for a cash-strapped government to express a degree of concern about the vast amounts of money leaking away from the Treasury. Well, you'd think so, but apparently not. This latest leak has revealed an empire that has grown exponentially and in secret. It's an empire that's poorly regulated and in desperate need of reform, and it's currently being protected by the state. Labour has called for a public inquiry. The Guardian says the government needs to find out whether our laws are fit for purpose and whether the people that police them have the resources they need. Given the evidence so far, the answer to both questions would appear to be a resounding no. But maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the idea. And if so, it's working tremendously well. Congratulations to all concerned. 0345 606. I still haven't gotten around to Donald Trump's unravelling. I may This says cashless society. Wait a minute. Is that where it starts? Yeah. Jane says, I'd like to get as much debt as you like. I'd say get as much debt as you like and enjoy yourself before Trump gets us all nuked. Well, you've got a good point there, Jane. I don't know if this is from the same person, but it says cashless society. What about hackers? Banks might say we've been hacked by the Chinese and they emptied your account. How would you know the truth? Well, good point. We'd have to take their word for it, because they seem like honest people, don't they? Rochester, Robert.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Yes, so with this financial and debts and tax relief, this has been insipid and been a part of modern society for a very long time.
Insidious,
and
you mean, not insipid.
Well, yes, okay. It's been a part of our politics for a very long time, and this is why I implore people to start voting for actual parties that actually offer representation. Sadly, there seems to be only two parties out there, and Green Party and UKIP, that don't employ whips, so therefore the actual candidates are actually uninhibited by the party. But anyway...
well, no, I guess that's a good point, because it seems odd to have a system where you don't actually vote for the Prime Minister, you vote for your individual representative, and then your individual representative is supposed to act like a robot and do whatever the Prime Minister says, which is a curious way to run a country, ain't it?
I 100% agree with you. Although you yourself admit that you don't like the outcome of the actual election that we had, it was one of the first cases of democracy for quite a long time, of proper democracy. But then we have to entrust in government that aren't really interested in the people, to be completely frank. Well, it doesn't appear that way. No, I mean, I'm not just talking about this government, but if you were in their position, then you wouldn't really be interested in the people. You'd be like every other person on earth, interested in yourself. And I guess that's the problem. We're run by human beings. Perhaps it'd be better if we were run by computers. Correct. I would have to disagree, because I just want to serve my community. So that's a whole other story.
Right.
And that's my greatest gratification, to see people's lives get better off, and to see their children have a better life than their parents. But that may be an old value.
Yeah, don't go into politics.
But I do think that there are certain criteria and certain occasions in our lives. I believe I'm slightly younger than you, that have actually represented and caused this to be speeded up. In '97, obviously that was when Tony Blair came into power. The government, the taxpayers changed. Basically, those people who are PYE and self-employed were the biggest taxpayer at the beginning of the year, but by the end of the year, the corporations and the nameless giants were the biggest taxpayer, and that has continued ever more. And until that is returned back that way, to be completely frank, you're going to benefit the biggest taxpayer more than you are the lower taxpayer, and I think that is where the problem relies.
Well, I'm not sure that's actually right, because we're talking, if the people were if individuals were the biggest taxpayers en masse, as individuals they wouldn't actually be contributing that much, as they don't at the moment, but corporations would be contributing as individual entities vast amounts of money. So it's much more likely that you would do whatever an individual who represents a corporation wants, more than just an individual who just represents themselves as a member of the public. So again, I think £1 million speaks louder than 1 million people.
I have to agree with that. But when you've got 1 million people, well, see, that's where it kind of squirts, because the issue is that we've seen with wages, regardless on how you conform it to, if you look at sort of house prices, they aren't in line with wages. You go back to the 60s, they were actually a part of the average wages index, and now we've seen them go completely out of control, way above most people's means, and therefore incites to the debt culture, which has then obviously gone, well, it's going lunatic at the moment.
Well, I think it's telling that the way that the government now determines what the rate of inflation is doesn't actually include the price of putting a roof over your head, which is what I would suggest is most people's major expense.
Yes, and this is where I think it leads back to the first cycle, which is who represents us, because quite frankly, I think the wages that we've been paid, if the average wage is 25,600 or thereabouts, and house prices in my area are 250,000, if you put that into the average wage index of the 1960s, I would have to be earning £75,000 to be able to afford that house. And so therefore it means that we're completely out of kilter 3 times the amount, which coincidentally you've been talking about with credit cards.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it, that the ordinary economic theory would probably suggest that disparity with income and the price of homes would lead to a crash in the value of homes. It's a bubble, you know, like tulips used to be preposterously expensive because everybody wanted one. Actually, it's got nothing to do with tulips, but that was the first big bubble. This is what made me think about it. But that's probably not going to happen because the number of people that are vying for a house is not, well, unless Brexit really turns people off coming here and there's a giant rush for the exit, then it's probably not going to happen. And so they will be artificially pumped up and up and up and never deflate.
Well, I'd have to agree with you because it's a new car thing again. Because, not being funny, if you got a choice, old car or new car, you get the new car if you can afford the new car.
Yeah.
Or let's not say afford. If the bank says you can buy the new car or you can have the old car that you can afford, you're going to take the new car because you can afford it.
But the problem is people can't actually afford it, so they're not paying money for it. They're renting it essentially. They're paying credit for it, and may not even own the car when they've finished their 3 years of credit payments. Plus, unlike a house, people don't actually need a car in most areas of the country, and it's and the value of the asset plummets the moment you sit in it for the very first time, unlike a house, which, as I said, even though it does appear to have the characteristics of a bubble, it isn't likely to tank, whereas cars certainly are. And so the next financial crisis is probably not going to be caused by a housing bubble. It's going to be caused by a car bubble. Not a bubble car, but a car bubble.
Yes, that's if the Uber companies with these self-drive cars don't jump in beforehand and take over the car market and take it completely away from us and stop you and me being able to buy a self-drive car because they will price them at prices of a Bugatti Veyron, but that's a whole other story.
Well, they're not going to get very far if they price them at £1 million each. But I know I've said this before. The moment that the steering wheel is ripped from a car and it just becomes a pod for us to be driven around in by a robot, well, that moment can't happen soon enough because it's been proven over and over and over again. Human beings can't drive.
Affirmative.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Robert.
knows who the hell he is.
Yes, talking of the Orange Nightmare, here's a call in Danes Hill. Hello, Anne.
Hello.
Anne.
Nick, my son is an American and a supporter of Trump, much to my horror.
I blame the parents.
I don't. His father is also a Republican. I'm Scottish to the core and would have always voted Democrat. But the problem with what he says is happening now is that Trump is fulfilling the promises of the conservative Christians that he made, and he has a huge conservative Christian base.
Yeah,
and this is
which is bizarre, don't you find? The religious right seem to be utterly irreligious. I mean, they're standing by this Roy Moore guy, who's such a creep. He was banned from shopping malls for bothering teenage girls, and they're standing by him because that's what Jesus would do.
Well, it's just extraordinary. But I mean, this Jerusalem thing is going to cause problems. But it was one of his promises, and another of his promises was tax repeal, which he's managed to do this week. And so you see, my son says he's doing a lot of the smaller things that we're not hearing about and getting them passed. We only hear the major ones. So how much we're going to have to hang on to this man?
Oh, he's going to be a two-term president unless he actually his brain expires in his bright orange skull and he falls to the floor and passed out. Then he is going to be a two-term president, I betcha.
Yeah, I have fun discussing this with my menfolk, I may say. I'm horrible. And this new account from a lady who says she's been attacked by... You see, we've forgotten about that tape that they did on the bus. Do you remember the tape he did on the bus?
Yes, that's right. The grabbing them by the area.
Yeah, by tape. And that.
Well, the latest thing on that was that after the longest while, he now says, "Oh, that's fake news. That it didn't happen. That somebody made that up. That he never said that. That it's a false tape. It was the Russians that did it, or maybe it was the Chinese, or something like that." He's absolutely extraordinary.
It's extraordinary, and he gets away with it. But he gets away with it, I think, because his opposition was so poor. I mean, out of all those millions of people, Clinton and him, I couldn't have voted for either of them. I don't have a vote, but I wouldn't have voted for either of them.
Well, I would have voted for Hillary because she's, by any measure, she's the least worst.
Yes, I think you're right on that. But, neither of them stood up very strongly on the moral phase or anything else.
Well, no.
Anyway, I shall keep you in touch. My son is on his way over, so I shall call again and find out the latest.
Well, I think you need to correct your son, Anne, with the greatest Scottish strictness.
I will do that.
All right. Thanks a lot, Anne. Donald Trump has another sex abuse allegation.
Oh, no.
Another one. That, I think, makes it 14. This is a former anchor of the TV news station Fox News. Now, this is a woman who accused Bill O'Reilly. Now, if you don't know who Bill O'Reilly is, he is the blowhard that used to be the main opinion presenter on Fox News, because they're unlike our news stations in that much, or if not most, of their output is not news, it's opinion. And Bill O'Reilly was the most opinionated of them all, and he was huge amongst the demographic that watches Fox News, as in white men of 100 years plus. And he got fired because of the sexual harassment claims. And one of the people that accused Bill O'Reilly of sexual harassment has claimed that President Donald Trump tried to kiss her on the lips at the same time that he married Melania. And if there's anyone that knows about sexual harassment, it's a woman that works for Fox News. They've taken it off the air here now. It's curious that they did that. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason behind it, other than, I have an idea, which I'll keep to myself. But I always wondered aloud, I've mentioned it every now and again on this show, why the women that read the news on that station all look like And there's no other way of putting it, high-class hookers waiting for a date at a five-star hotel. They had them with ironed, straight blonde hair, all of them, high dresses, high heels, perched on stools, showing maximum flesh. It wasn't just for the ratings among the ancient male audience. It seemed like it's what turned management on. It's a very odd state of affairs over there. But anyway, former Fox News anchor Juliet Huddy says this incident with Donald Trump happened when they were in a lift at Trump Tower in New York in 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. At the time, Donald Trump, who married Melania in January of 2005, was hosting The Apprentice on NBC, you know, that stupid You're Fired show. She said, he took me to lunch at Trump Tower, just us two. He said goodbye to me in the lift while his security guy was there, and rather than kiss me on the cheek, he leaned in to kiss me on the lips. And she said, I was like, oh my God. As you would be. She said that Trump then invited her and a friend both back to see The Apprentice set. She said, now I've matured, I think I would say no, at the point that Donald Trump advanced at her with his lips. But she said, at the time I was younger and I was a little shocked. I thought maybe he didn't mean to do it, but I was sort of making excuses for him. And that seems to be the case with Donald Trump. People just keep making excuses for, oh, that's just Donald. Put almost anything he says in the mouth of any other world politician, and you would think that that politician would have to be fired or have a serious investigation conducted upon them. But people think, oh, it's just Donald Trump. We're sort of used to it. We've normalised his behaviour. This woman, who is now a host on WABC Radio, WABC, said that Trump later spoke about the kiss off camera when he was her guest on another Fox News show. She says, Trump came on stage and he said to the audience, I tried hitting on her, but she blew me off. Which is exactly the sort of thing that Donald Trump would say. But what kind of a person hits on someone leading with their lips? Somebody who is really great for women.
I will be so great to women. I cherish women.
Yeah, to women. Did you notice that? Not for women. I will not... he didn't say, I will be so great for women. I will be so great to women. You know, if he was an actor, he would have been forced out by now. He would have been fired. So it's a good job he doesn't have a position of importance, eh?
You are going to love President Trump.
Yeah. He's president. He can't even believe it himself. Can you believe it?
I'm president. Can you believe it?
No. And there was that incident where he seemed to... There's a guy on, I think it's the New York Times, called Horowitz, and he said that Donald Trump's slurring at the end of his speech about Jerusalem was the batteries running low in Vladimir Putin's remote control. But that's not what happened. He appeared to break down at the end of a speech, and all sorts of suggestions about what it was that happened there have been put up, including a dental plate that holds his teeth in place came loose and made him slur. That's not what happened. The White House insisted that Donald Trump's lispy, halting performance on Wednesday in an Israel policy speech was nothing to worry about, and that a U.S. Navy doctor will release the results of a physical next year to prove it. You know, right after Donald Trump releases his tax return. He's not going to do that either.
I make $400 million a year, so what difference does it make?
The president's speaking became irregular and his speech slurred during part of his delivery, concluding with, God bless the United States. He only just got through it. It's available on the World Wide Web. Look it up on YouTube. Of course, Sarah Sanders, she is the person who has to get up and to come up with excuses and fantastical explanations about what it is that Donald Trump meant or why he acted in the way he did. She's probably a lawyer. Liar! That's what I mean. She said the president's throat was dry. It was nothing more than that. Oh, please. It did look like he was breaking down, like an automaton was on the blink. Nothing to see here, she said. That was the position of the White House. The co-host on a television program on MSNBC said that dementia was the most likely explanation for Donald Trump's odd oratorical performance. This fellow called Joe Scarborough said that he has personal experience with people who are struggling with issues like that because their personality changes, and that person was his mother. He says, unfortunately, in the case of my mother, I can move that to the side and I'm totally fine with that. But in this case, Donald Trump has control of nuclear weapons. Exactly. That's the problem. The man with the briefcase who follows him wherever he goes. A Virginia board-certified dentist told the Daily Mail on Wednesday that Donald Trump's suddenly wind-whistled S's and shifting lower jaw as he spoke at the White House indicated a loose denture plate. Oh, he's got something loose, all right, but I don't think it's a denture plate. We do know, we have heard from Donald Trump's personal physician. And that was in September of last year, published a one-page letter from his personal physician that pronounced him in excellent physical health. Like a butcher's dog. And that physician is called Harold Bornstein. And if you want a good laugh, look up a picture of Donald Trump's personal physician, Harold Bornstein. If that man says you're all right, you should get a second opinion. Harold Bornstein wrote in a short and mistake-laden medical synopsis that Donald Trump would be the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency. He even speaks like Donald Trump. In fact, it seems like Donald Trump actually wrote that. I wouldn't be surprised if he had. His physical strength and stamina are extraordinary, the doctor said. An organizer of the anti-Trump March for Truth organization had her own theory. Holly O'Reilly said, "Is Trump using again?" She asked in a tweet. My mouth used to get dry like this when I was on drugs.
Want to score some pot?
Well, maybe that's it. In which case, we're all in big trouble. Huge.
I wanted to really say that I love you, I respect you, there's nobody I respect more, you're going to do a fantastic job.
Thanks, Tony, you're the best. That was him talking to the CIA, by the way. He was addressing the CIA on virtually his first day in office. He's the President of the United States of America. Can you believe that? So in the Washington Post, which is no big fan of Donald Trump, right enough, but I think that it is possibly the best newspaper in the world at the moment. They don't have to worry about money because they have all that Amazon money to prop them up. There's a woman called Bella DePaulo. She is she used to be a professor at the University of Virginia, and she is an expert on lying. And that's the truth. And she has studied Donald Trump. And the conclusions of her study do not make for happy reading. She says, in research beginning in the mid-1990s when I was a professor at the University of Virginia, my colleagues and I asked 77 college students and 70 people from the nearby community to keep diaries of all the lies they told every day for a week. They handed them in to us with no names attached. And we calculated the participants' rates of lying and categorised each lie as either self-serving, in other words, told to advantage the liar, or protect the liar from embarrassment, or blame, or other undesired outcome, or kind lies, told to advantage, or flatter, or protect someone else. We do that all the time. It's still lie. Oh, you look fabulous in that. Bum looks big? No! That kind of thing. The college students in our research told an average of 2 lies a day, and the community members outside of the college told 1 lie a day. A more recent study of lies of 1,000 American adults told in the previous 24 hours found that people told, on average, 1.65 lies per day. And then we get to Donald Trump. In Donald Trump's first 298 days in office, he made 1,628 false or misleading claims, according to the tally, which is done on a daily basis by the Washington Post. That's about 6 per day, which is far higher than the average rate. Now, the add-on to this is, of course, they only know about the lies that he made in public. They have no idea what he was saying in private. So it was probably much greater than the 6+ lies a day that they have determined that he makes, which is already 6 times as many as most of the people that this lady was studying in Virginia. And his rate of lying has been accelerating. It's been getting worse, not better. Starting in early October last year, this year I guess, the Post's tracking showed that Trump told 9 lies a day, outpacing even the biggest liars in the research that she'd done. But the flood of deceit isn't the most surprising finding about Donald Trump. I mean, you'd expect that he is... even his biggest fans would admit that he is the disseminator of misinformation. Liar! That's what I mean. Well, maybe they wouldn't. But it's true. But it's not the flood of deceit that's the most surprising thing about Donald Trump, she says. Nearly 2/3 of Trump's lies, 65%, were self-serving. Okay, that's not really surprising either, because he's practically everything he says is to the glory of the Donald. Examples included, they're big tax cuts, they're huge, the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, actually. Everybody says so, that kind of thing. And about the people who came to see him on a presidential visit to Vietnam last month. He said they were lined up in the streets by their tens of thousands. He's still lying about crowd size. He's got a thing about size, calling Dr. Freud. So 65% of the lies that Donald Trump tells are in service of the glory that is Donald. Slightly less than 10% of his lies were kind ones, told to advantage or flatter or protect somebody else. He told over 6 times as many self-serving lies as kind lies, which is a much higher ratio than any of the participants that they found in their survey. He's unique. Most of the people in their survey told double the number of self-centered lies compared with kind ones. With Donald Trump, it's 6 times as many. They said that the most stunning way that Trump's lies differed from the participants was in their cruelty. 50% of Donald Trump's lies were hurtful or disparaging of others. And now that, if you've been paying close attention, this won't come as much of a surprise. But if you think about that now and don't just write it off as, oh, that's Donald Trump, he is actually, he seems to be deeply unpleasant. Lashing out left and right. 50% of Donald Trump's lies were hurtful or disparaging of other people. The Trump lies that could not be coded into just one category were typically told both to belittle others and enhance himself. For example, he said, Senator Bob Corker begged me to endorse him for re-election in Tennessee. I said no, and he dropped out, saying that he could not win without my endorsement. So he's got a senator begging him for his endorsement, and he said no, and said that he couldn't win without the backing of the great Donald Trump, thereby belittling somebody else and enhancing himself. And the sheer frequency of Trump's lies appears to be having an effect. And it may not be the one that he was going for. Now, that lady that I was talking to earlier on said that Donald Trump's popularity is actually increasing, and I doubt that that's the case. I think that the people that support him are very, very vocal. But I'm not sure that the number of people that are supporting him is on the increase. I think it's probably the reverse of that. It's just that the people who do support him are digging their heels in ever more strongly or ever harder and vocalizing their support ever louder. They said the sheer frequency of Trump's lies appears to be having an effect, and it may not be the one that he was going for. A poll from late October showed that 35% of voters believed that Donald Trump was honest. 35%. Fewer than 40% of American voters to see the president as honest is truly remarkable. Because despite what you might think, most humans, most of the time, believe other people. It's our default setting to believe what people tell us. But by telling so many lies, and so many that are mean-spirited, Donald Trump is violating some of the most fundamental norms of human social interaction and human decency. That sounds like Donald Trump. Violating some of the most fundamental norms of human social interaction and human decency. Yep, that sounds about him. I don't think that Donald Trump is a very nice person.
Donald Trump is a very nice person.
Once again, I stand corrected. Who knows what might happen between now and next Friday at 10 o'clock. The possibilities are endless. And assuming that global thermonuclear war hasn't broken out between now and then we'll reconvene and chew it up and spit it out there.